The diplomatic vessel Valiant moved through the darkness of space like a silver needle, threading through black cloth. Inside the ship, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the massive station growing larger on the view screen. Zenith Prime, the headquarters of the Galactic Council, hung in space like a jeweled crown. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds came and went from its docking bays every day. Jake had been coming to this station for 5 years now, and every time he felt the same tightness in his chest. The Council treated humans like children who had wandered into a room full of adults. They smiled politely, patted humanity on the head, and then did whatever they wanted without caring what Earth thought about it. Behind him, Ambassador Lisa Grant stood with her briefcase clutched in both hands. She had been Earth's voice on the Council for 12 years. Jake had watched her go from hopeful and energetic to tired and frustrated. Her hair had more gray in it now than brown, and the lines around her eyes had deepened. Today she wore her formal diplomatic uniform, dark blue with the gold Earth insignia on the collar. "Docking in 15 minutes, Ambassador," Jake said without turning around. "Thank you, Captain," Lisa replied. Her voice was calm, but Jake heard the edge in it. He had heard her practicing her speech last night, going over and over the words. This was going to be different from all the other Council sessions. Today, Earth was going to present evidence that the Council had been actively working against human interest for years. Commander Paul Stevens approached from the navigation station. He was younger than Jake, with sandy hair and an earnest face that made him look like he should be teaching school instead of running a starship. "Captain, I'm reading increased military traffic around the station. At least 40 Council security vessels in close orbit." Jake frowned. "That's more than usual." "They expecting trouble?" Paul shrugged. "Could be routine. Or maybe they heard rumors about what we're planning to present today." Dr. Helen Brooks joined them, carrying a data pad. She was the ship's chief science officer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "All the evidence is loaded and ready, Ambassador. 3 years of research, communication intercepts, shipping records, and testimony from independent sources. They won't be able to dismiss this." Lisa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't be so sure, Helen. I've seen them dismiss harder evidence than this. The Council has a remarkable ability to ignore things they don't want to see." The Valiant glided into one of the station's docking bays. The bay was enormous, large enough to hold 50 ships the size of the Valiant. As they settled onto the docking platform, Jake could see other vessels from across the galaxy. The Krell warships were ugly and brutal, covered in weapons and armor. The Zelthian ships were sleek and beautiful, all curves and flowing lines. The Vraxian traders were squat and practical, built for cargo rather than elegance. And then there was the Valiant, a human ship. Smaller than most of the others, simpler in design but sturdy. Like humanity itself, Jake thought. Not the biggest or the most advanced, but tough enough to keep going when things got hard. Lisa gathered her things and headed for the airlock with Helen beside her. Jake followed with a security detail of 4 Marines. They walked through the station's corridors, which were built to accommodate dozens of different species. The ceilings were high enough for the tall Vraxians, and the floors had different gravity settings for species that preferred lighter or heavier environments. Other diplomats and officials moved through the halls. Many of them glanced at the humans and then looked away quickly as if embarrassed. A few Krell in their heavy armor made loud comments in their growling language. Jake didn't speak Krell, but he recognized mockery when he heard it. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seating arranged in tiers that rose toward the ceiling. Each species had their own section with appropriate environmental controls. The humans sat in a small area near the bottom, a recent addition to the chamber. Above them, the older and more powerful species had the better seats. The session began with routine business. Trade agreements, border disputes, scientific exchange programs. Lisa sat quietly through all of it, her briefcase on her lap. Jake stood against the wall with the other security officers watching the council at work. The Krell representative was a massive creature named Gorthak, covered in scales and scars from 100 battles. The Zelthian compact was represented by a being of pure energy, contained in a crystalline shell. The Vraxians sent a hive mind collective that spoke in perfect harmony. There were dozens of other species, some familiar to Jake and some he had never seen before. Finally, it was Earth's turn to speak. Lisa walked to the center of the chamber floor, her heels clicking on the polished stone. She activated her data pad, and holographic images appeared in the air around her. "Honored council members," she began. "For 15 years, humanity has been a member of this council. We joined in good faith, hoping to learn from older civilizations and to contribute what we could to the galactic community. Today I present evidence that this faith has been betrayed." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several council members leaned forward in their seats. Gorthak the Krell laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Lisa continued, her voice growing stronger. 3 years ago, human colonists applied for settlement rights in the Kepler sector. The council denied our application, citing environmental concerns. 2 months later, the same territories were granted to the Zelthian Compact. The environmental concerns were never mentioned again. The holographic images showed documents, star charts, and dated records. Helen had done her research well. The evidence was clear and undeniable. "Last year," Lisa went on, "the human transport ship Newton called for emergency assistance when their engines failed near the Drift Nebula. 3 council patrol ships were in the area. All 3 ignored the distress call. 73 civilians died when the Newton's life support failed. I have the communication logs here." More images appeared. Jake felt his jaw tighten as he listened. He had heard about the Newton, but seeing the actual evidence made his anger burn hotter. Lisa presented case after case. Human merchants being denied trading permits that were freely given to other species. Human scientists being excluded from research projects. Human ships being harassed by council security forces in neutral space. The evidence piled up like stones building a wall. When she finished, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Gorthak stood up, his massive form towering over the other council members. "The human complains like a child who was not given candy," he growled. "Perhaps if your species was more valuable to the council, you would receive better treatment. But you are weak. You are small. You have nothing we need or want." Other council members made agreeing sounds. The Zelthian representative spoke in a voice like crystal chimes. "Humanity must understand their place. The council has existed for 10,000 years. You have been members for barely 15. You do not have the wisdom or the right to question our decisions." Lisa stood in the center of the chamber, her face pale but her back straight. "We question decisions that harm our people. That is not childishness. That is basic dignity." The vote was called. The matter of human settlement rights in disputed territories came up once more. The council voted to restrict human expansion while simultaneously approving Zelthian claims to the same space. The vote was not even close. Jake watched from his position against the wall. He saw the contempt on the faces of the council members. He saw them dismiss 15 years of human effort with a casual wave. He saw them treating Lisa, who had worked so hard for so long, like she was something annoying they wanted to brush away. Something inside him broke. He had followed orders his whole life. He had been patient and diplomatic and professional. But watching the council's arrogance and cruelty, he realized that patience and diplomacy were not going to change anything. The council saw humanity as inferior, and nothing Lisa or anyone else said was going to change their minds. Lisa walked back to the human section slowly. She set down her briefcase and stood there for a moment, her head bowed. Then she lifted her chin and walked back to the center of the chamber. "Ambassador Grant," the council chairman said wearily, "the vote has concluded. You may return to your seat." "No," Lisa said quietly. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. The chamber fell completely silent. "No?" the chairman repeated. "What do you mean, no?" Lisa's voice grew stronger. "I mean no. No more patience. No more diplomacy. No more begging for basic fairness from a council that has no intention of ever treating humanity as equals. I have presented undeniable evidence of your bias and cruelty, and you have dismissed it without even pretending to care. You have shown us exactly what you think of Earth and her people." She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. The Earth insignia behind the human section of the chamber retracted into the wall. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We sever all diplomatic ties. We will no longer attend these sessions, no longer seek your approval for our actions, and no longer accept your authority over human affairs. We are done. The message reached Earth 6 hours after the Valiant jumped away from Zenith Prime. Admiral Kyle Harris was in his office at Fleet Command when the communication came through. He read the coded message 3 times, then leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. After 15 years of waiting and planning, it had finally happened. Kyle was 60 years old with gray hair cut military short and a face that had seen too many battles. He had fought in the border wars before humanity joined the Council. He had watched his government sign treaties that gave away human rights and dignity in exchange for peace. He had smiled and nodded while alien diplomats treated Earth like a backward colony that should be grateful for any scraps thrown its way. But he had also been preparing. Protocol Exodus was his creation, developed in secret with a small group of officers and civilians who understood that the Council's protection might not last forever, or that it might become a cage instead of a shield. He pressed a button on his desk. Get me the Joint Chiefs, emergency priority, and wake up the President. Within an hour, Kyle was in the war room, deep beneath Fleet Command. The President appeared on the main screen, calling in from her residence. She looked tired and worried, her dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Admiral Harris, I just received Ambassador Grant's report, President Janet Cole said. Tell me we have a plan. Kyle stood and activated the room's holographic display. A map of human space appeared, showing Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and the network of stations and outposts that humanity had built over the past 70 years. Madam President, we have Protocol Exodus. It was designed for exactly this situation. All human military assets are being recalled to defensive positions. We're bringing home every merchant ship, every science vessel, every citizen in alien space. We're pulling back to our own territory and fortifying. How long will that take? The President asked. 48 hours for essential personnel and ships, a week for everyone else. Some civilians in deep alien space might take longer, but we'll get them home. One of the Joint Chiefs, a woman named General Amy Porter, spoke up. Admiral, what about the colonies on the frontier? New Portland Haven Station, the mining operations in the belt? They're exposed, if the Council decides to make an example of them. Kyle had already thought of that. We're moving the 5th Fleet to cover the frontier colonies, and I'm activating the reserve ships we've been keeping in mothballs. They're older, but they're functional. The President rubbed her temples. The Council will see our mobilization as an act of aggression. With respect, Madam President, we're past worrying about what the Council thinks, Kyle said. They've made it clear they don't see us as equals. We can either accept that and live under their thumb forever, or we can stand up and face whatever comes next. The President was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Do it. Activate Protocol Exodus. And, Admiral, make sure we're ready for war, because I think it's coming whether we want it or not. Across human space, ships began moving. Merchant vessels that had been trading in alien ports suddenly departed, sometimes leaving cargo behind. Scientists working on joint council projects packed their equipment and left without explanation. Human tourists and workers booked passage home on any ship that would take them. Not everyone was happy about it. In a bar on Mars, a man named Danny Price watched the news broadcast with growing anger. He was a trader who made his living running goods between human and alien worlds. The Council's trade networks were vast and profitable. Humanity pulling out meant his business was finished. This is insane, he said to the woman next to him. We can't survive without the Council. They'll crush us. The woman, a pilot named Sarah Kim, shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe we should have stood up to them years ago. I've been flying Council space routes for 10 years. You know how many times I've been searched and harassed by their security forces? How many times they've confiscated my cargo for safety inspections that never happened? I'm tired of being treated like a criminal just for being human. Danny shook his head. Better alive and disrespected than dead and proud. On the frontier colony of New Portland, Governor Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of the main habitat and looked out at the settlement. 15,000 people lived here, farming and mining on a world that had once been written off as useless. Humans had made it work through sweat and stubbornship. Now Council ships were gathering at the edge of the system. Maria could see them on the long-range sensors, watching and waiting. The nearest alien civilization was the Krell, and they had always resented New Portland's existence. This world had been in disputed space, and the Council had finally granted humans the right to settle it only 5 years ago. Maria suspected that right was about to be revoked. Her assistant, a young man named Peter Shaw, came running into the observation deck. "Governor, Fleet Command is ordering evacuation of non-essential personnel. They're sending transports, but they won't arrive for 2 days." Maria nodded slowly. "Start organizing the evacuation. Women and children first, then the elderly. Everyone else stays to keep the colony running until we know what's happening." "Are we really going to fight the entire Galactic Council?" Peter asked. His voice shook slightly. "I hope not," Maria said. "But if they come for us, they'll find out that humans don't give up easily." Lieutenant Chris Palmer was on patrol near the edge of human space when he saw the Krell battle group. His fighter squadron had been running a routine border patrol, the kind of boring duty that usually involved nothing but empty space and stale rations. Then his sensors lit up like a festival celebration. 12 Krell warships, moving in formation toward human territory. Chris felt his heart start pounding. He hit the emergency broadcast button. "Command, this is Falcon 1. I have eyes on a Krell battle group, bearing 273 Mark V. They're on a direct course for New Portland. Request instructions." The response took 30 seconds, which felt like an hour. "Falcon 1. Maintain observation. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Shadow them and report their movements." Chris and his squadron fell back, keeping the Krell ships on their sensors but staying out of weapons range. The Krell ships were massive, each one 10 times the size of his fighter. Their hulls were covered in armor and weapon ports. They looked like exactly what they were, tools of war built by a species that loved fighting. For 6 hours, Chris followed the Krell fleet. His fuel was running low and his nerves were stretched tight. Then the Krell ship stopped at the edge of New Portland's system and just sat there, waiting. "What are they doing?" His wingman, a pilot named Kevin Grant, asked over the squadron channel. "Sending a message," Chris replied. "They're letting us know they can get to our colonies whenever they want." Back on Earth, Ambassador Lisa Grant sat in a small office in the State Department, facing a panel of government officials. Some of them looked angry. Some looked scared. All of them wanted answers. "Ambassador Grant, you have created an interstellar incident," Senator Richard Holmes said. His face was red, and his voice was sharp. "You had no authority to withdraw humanity from the Galactic Council without government approval." Lisa met his eyes steadily. "Senator, I had all the authority I needed. I was Earth's representative to the Council. I represented humanity's voice, and after 15 years of watching them ignore that voice, dismiss our concerns, and actively work against our interests, I decided that voice needed to say something different." "You should have consulted with us first," another senator said. "There wasn't time," Lisa replied. "The Council was voting to restrict our expansion rights while giving those same rights to the Zelthians. They were doing it right then, in that session. If I had waited to consult with Earth, the decision would have already been made. I acted in the moment because the moment demanded action." Senator Holmes leaned forward. "And now we're facing the possibility of war with civilizations far more advanced than us. Was your pride worth that?" Lisa felt anger flash through her. "This isn't about pride, Senator. It's about survival. The Council was slowly strangling us. They were blocking our expansion, sabotaging our trade, and letting our people die when they called for help. How long were we supposed to accept that? How many more humans had to die before we were allowed to say enough?" The room fell silent. Finally, the president's voice came through the speaker system. "Thank you, Ambassador Grant. This panel is dismissed. Ambassador, please report to my office." Lisa walked through the halls of government alone. She had expected to feel triumphant, or at least satisfied. Instead, she just felt tired. She had burned every bridge with the Council. There was no going back now. The president was waiting in her office, looking out the window at the Earth below. "Lisa, I'm not going to pretend that what you did wasn't reckless, but I'm also not going to pretend it wasn't necessary. I've read your reports over the years. I've seen how the Council treats us. Maybe it was time someone stood up to them." "They're going to retaliate," Lisa said quietly. "The Council doesn't accept defiance." "I know. Admiral Harris is mobilizing the fleet. We're pulling all our people back to human space. We're going to fortress up and see what happens next." As if on cue, the president's communicator chimed. She answered it. Commander Ryan Blake watched the Council fleet approaching on his ship's sensors and felt a strange calm settle over him. The Defiant was a destroyer, small and fast, designed for hit-and-run attacks rather than stand-up fights. His squadron consisted of 5 similar ships, and they were positioned at the edge of human space like a thin wire stretched across a doorway. Behind him on the bridge, Chief Engineer Sophie Green worked at her station with focused intensity. She had spent the last 3 months retrofitting the Defiant with experimental technology that Fleet Command had been developing in secret. New shield generators, modified weapons, systems that the Council had never seen before because they had never bothered to take human engineering seriously. "Contact in 30 minutes, Sophie said without looking up. "All systems are green. The modifications are holding steady." Ryan nodded. He had known Sophie for 5 years, ever since she had joined the Defiant's crew fresh out of engineering school. She was brilliant, maybe the smartest person he had ever met, and she had a gift for looking at technology and seeing not what it was, but what it could become. "All ships, this is Blake," Ryan said over the squadron channel. "Remember the plan. We're not here to win. We're here to slow them down and make them bleed. Hit hard, move fast. Don't stay in one place long enough for them to target us properly." Acknowledgements came back from the other 4 ships. Ryan recognized all the voices. He had served with these officers for years. They were good people and they trusted him. He hoped that trust wasn't going to get them killed today. The Council fleet came into visual range. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Intelligence reports had said 200 ships, but seeing them was different. They filled the view screen like a swarm of insects, all different sizes and shapes. Krell warships with their brutal armor, Zelthian cruisers that looked like art pieces, Fraxian carriers holding hundreds of fighters, and dozens of other species, all united in their determination to punish humanity for defiance. Leading them was a massive flagship, a Zelthian dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship in the fleet. That would be Counselor Vexthor, the admiral the Council had chosen to lead their punitive expedition. Ryan had read the intelligence file on Vexthor. He was arrogant, aggressive, and had never lost a battle in 40 years of service. "They're hailing us," Sophie said. "Audio only." Ryan accepted the communication. A voice like crystal bells filled the bridge. "Human vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. This fleet is authorized to use all necessary force to ensure compliance with Galactic Council directives. You cannot stop us. You cannot slow us. You are outmatched in every way. Retreat now and your deaths will be quick." Ryan smiled tightly. "This is Commander Blake of the Earth Destroyer Defiant. Your fleet is entering human space without authorization. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. If you continue, we will consider it an act of war." There was a pause, then Vexthor laughed. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like glass breaking. "You dare to threaten this fleet? 5 small ships against 200? You humans truly are as foolish as the Council believes. Very well. You may have your glorious last stand. It will make an amusing story to tell." The communication cut off. Ryan looked at Sophie. "Ready?" She grinned fiercely. "Let's show them what humans can do." The Defiant and her sister ships accelerated forward. On the view screen, the Council fleet's formation shifted smoothly. The larger ships held back while a screen of cruisers and destroyers moved forward to engage the human squadron. Even their advance force was 3 times the size of Ryan's entire group. "Weapons range in 10 seconds, Sophie announced. 987. Ryan watched the distance close. The Council ships were moving in a standard combat formation, textbook perfect. They expected the human ships to either run or charge in recklessly. They were about to get a surprise. "All ships execute Pattern Alpha," Ryan ordered. The 5 human destroyers split apart in 5 different directions at maximum acceleration. The Council ships hesitated, confused by the sudden dispersal. By the time they adjusted their formation, the Defiant was already sweeping around the enemy's flank. "Firing," Sophie said calmly. The Defiant's main guns opened up. The weapons looked standard, but Sophie had modified them to fire at a higher frequency than Council sensors expected. The shots punched through the shields of a Krell cruiser and tore into its hull. The cruiser spun away, venting atmosphere and debris. Before the Council ships could respond, the Defiant was already moving again. Ryan pushed the engines to maximum, skimming past a Zelthian destroyer so close that their shields scraped against each other. The other human ships were doing the same, appearing and disappearing like ghosts, striking and vanishing before the Council could bring their superior firepower to bear. "They're trying to box us in," Sophie said, multiple ships moving to intercept. "Let them try," Ryan replied. He sent the Defiant into a dive that would have torn apart most ships. The Defiant's frame groaned, but Sophie's reinforcements held. They shot under a Council battlecruiser, fired a spread of missiles into its belly, and were gone before the explosions even registered. Lieutenant Maya Jordan was flying her fighter somewhere in the chaos, leading her squadron through the battle like a needle threading fabric. She was 26 years old and had been flying fighters for 4 years. Her parents had wanted her to be a doctor. Instead, she had joined the fleet and discovered that she was born to fly. Her fighter was small and fast, armed with missiles and energy weapons that seemed insignificant compared to the massive guns on the capital ships. But Maya had learned that in combat, size wasn't everything. Speed mattered, surprise mattered, and willingness to take risks that seemed insane mattered most of all. "Falcon Squadron, form up on me," she ordered. Her 12 fighters gathered around her like a school of fish. "We're going after their carrier group. Target the flight decks and weapon systems." One of her pilots, a man named Alex Hunt, laughed nervously. "Boss, those carriers have point defense systems that could swat us like flies." "Then don't let them swat you," Maya replied. She pushed her fighter to maximum speed and dove toward the Council carriers. The carriers were huge, floating cities designed to launch and recover hundreds of fighters. Their flight decks were protected by energy shields and automated weapons. Maya led her squadron in at an angle that the defensive systems weren't designed to cover, coming in low and fast from beneath the carriers. Her targeting computer locked on. She fired her missiles and then pulled up hard, her fighter screaming through a turn that made her vision gray at the edges. Behind her, the missiles hit home. Explosions rippled across the carrier's flight deck. Secondary explosions followed as fuel and munitions cooked off. Good hit," Alex called. "Their flight operations are shut down." Maya was already lining up on the next carrier. The Council fighters were launching now, swarming out to engage the human squadron. But Maya's people were ready. They split into pairs using tactics that the Council pilots had never seen before. Human fighters didn't try to outgun the enemy. They outmaneuvered them, outthought them, and made every shot count. Back on the Defiant, Ryan watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Council fleet was starting to realize that this wasn't going to be the easy victory they had expected. Human ships were damaged, yes. 2 of Ryan's destroyers had taken heavy hits and were limping back toward friendly lines. But the Council had lost over a dozen ships and many more were damaged. Counselor Vexthor's voice came over the communication channel again, and this time the musical quality was gone. Now he just sounded angry. "What trickery is this? What deception are you using?" Ryan smiled grimly. "No trickery, Counselor. Just human ingenuity. You see, while the Council was busy dismissing us as primitive, we were busy improving, learning, adapting. You thought we were weak because we were young. You forgot that young also means flexible." Sophie called out a warning. "Multiple capital ships breaking formation. They're coming after us directly." Ryan saw it on the display. Vexthor had given up on using his screening forces and was bringing in the heavy ships. 3 battlecruisers and a dreadnought were accelerating toward the Defiant's position. "Time to go," Ryan said. He spun the Defiant around and accelerated away at maximum speed. The Council ships pursued, but they were larger and slower. Sophie worked her magic at the engineering station, coaxing every bit of power out of the engines. "They're firing," she announced calmly. Energy beams lanced through space. Most missed, but one caught the Defiant's aft shields. Alarms blared. Ryan felt the ship shudder, but the shields held. Sophie had upgraded those too, making them more efficient and resilient than standard human shields. Ryan led the pursuing ships on a winding path through space, always staying just ahead of their weapons range. He was heading for a specific location, a place that Fleet Command had prepared weeks ago. The asteroid field appeared ahead, a dense cluster of rocks and ice floating in space. Ryan didn't slow down. He guided the Defiant into the field with reckless speed, weaving between asteroids that loomed like mountains in the darkness. Behind him, the Council ships followed. They were bigger and had more powerful weapons, but they were also less maneuverable. Ryan used that. The meeting took place in secret, in an abandoned mining station at the edge of civilized space. Ambassador Lisa Grant arrived aboard a small unmarked ship, accompanied only by Captain Jake Morrison and a security detail. She wore civilian clothes instead of her diplomatic uniform. If the Council discovered what she was doing here, it would give them all the justification they needed to declare humanity criminals. The alien who waited for her in the station's main bay was unlike any species Lisa had seen before. He stood, about 5 feet tall, covered in blue-green scales that shimmered under the station's lights. His eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils like a cat. When he spoke, his voice was soft and melodious. Ambassador Grant, I am Envoy Krillix of the Saurian people. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. He bowed deeply, a gesture of respect that Lisa hadn't seen from an alien in years. Lisa returned the bow. Envoy Krillix, your message intrigued me. You said your people want to discuss an alliance with humanity? Krillix gestured toward a conference room. Please, let us talk in private. What I have to say is dangerous for both our peoples. They sat at a table that had once been used by miners to plan their work. Now it served a different purpose. Krillix placed a small device on the table that hummed quietly. A jammer, he explained, just in case the Council has listening devices here. The Council doesn't know you're here? Lisa asked. The Council doesn't know many things, Krillix replied. They don't know that many species in the galaxy are tired of their rule. They don't know that your defiance has inspired others to think about freedom. They don't know that they have created enemies by treating everyone who isn't part of their inner circle as servants. Lisa leaned forward. Tell me about your people. Krillix's expression grew sad. The Saurians were once a proud people. We had our own empire, small but prosperous. Then the Council came and offered us membership. We thought it was an honor. Instead, we discovered it was a trap. The Council took control of our trade routes. They stationed their military on our worlds. They told us what we could and couldn't do in our own territory. When we protested, they threatened to expel us and label us as enemies of galactic peace. Why not leave anyway? Jake asked. Because the Council makes examples of those who defy them, Krillix said quietly. 20 years ago, a species called the Vorta tried to withdraw from the Council. The Council declared them a threat to galactic stability and authorized military action. The Vorta homeworld was blockaded. Millions died from starvation and disease. Eventually, the Vorta surrendered and accepted even harsher terms than before. Lisa felt cold. So the Council rules through fear. Yes, and it has worked for thousands of years, until now. You humans did what no one else has dared to do. You stood up to them, you walked away, and then you hurt them when they tried to punish you. Do you understand what that means to species like mine? You showed us that the Council can be defied. You showed us that they can bleed. Jake crossed his arms. So you want us to fight your war for you? Krillix shook his head. No. We want to fight beside you. The Saurians are not warriors like humans, but we are many. We have 300 ships smaller than the Council's warships, but functional. We have industrial capacity, resources, and most importantly, we have intelligence. I can tell you things about the Council that you don't know. Weaknesses, divisions, secrets. Lisa studied the alien carefully. Why should we trust you? For all we know, this is a Council trap. You shouldn't trust me, Krillix said simply. Not yet. Trust must be earned. So let me prove our sincerity. I have brought you the complete specifications for the Council's shield technology. Study it. Use it. If it helps you survive, then perhaps we can talk again about alliance. He placed a data chip on the table. Lisa picked it up slowly, turning it over in her fingers. If this was real, it was incredibly valuable. If it was a trap, it could contain a virus that would cripple human computer systems. I'll have our people analyze this, Lisa said. If it checks out, we'll talk again. Dr. Nathan Cole was Earth's leading expert on alien cultures and first contact protocols. He was a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and a patient demeanor that made even the most nervous aliens feel comfortable. When Lisa brought him the Saurian data chip, he studied it for 3 days straight without sleeping. "It's real," he finally announced, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "The data is genuine. Our engineers have already started working with it. If we can adapt this technology, it will significantly improve our defensive capabilities." Lisa felt relief wash over her. "So the Saurians are sincere?" "It appears so. But Ambassador, I've been studying the history of the Galactic Council. The Saurians aren't the only species that has been mistreated. There are dozens of civilizations that have been bullied, exploited, or marginalized. If we reach out to them carefully, we might find more allies than we expect." Lisa nodded slowly. "Then let's reach out. Quietly. Carefully. We need to find out who else is ready to stand up to the Council." Over the next 3 weeks, Lisa conducted secret meetings across neutral space. She met with Vraxian merchants who were tired of Council tariffs and restrictions. She spoke with a delegation from the Thal Confederacy, a group of small worlds that had been denied Council membership because they weren't advanced enough. She even received a surprising communication from a faction within the Zelthian Compact itself, suggesting that not all Zelthians supported the Council's aggressive policies. Each meeting followed the same pattern. The aliens would express their grievances. Lisa would listen and offer no promises. Then the aliens would provide some form of assistance, information, technology, or resources to prove their goodwill. Slowly, carefully, a network was forming. Captain Jake Morrison got his own unexpected visitors one day while commanding a patrol near the outer colonies. His sensors picked up a distress call from a refugee convoy. 20 civilian ships, badly damaged and running on emergency power. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earthship Valiant," Jake said over the open channel. "Refugee convoy, please identify yourselves." The response came in heavily accented English. "This is Transport Leader Vexal of the Saurian people. We are refugees fleeing Council persecution. Our homeworld spoke out in support of humanity. The Council is punishing us for it. We are requesting sanctuary." Jake looked at his crew. They looked back at him with determination. "Refugee convoy, you are granted permission to enter human space. Escort ships will guide you to Haven Station. You'll be safe there." The Saurian ships limped into human territory, and Jake's squadron provided cover. As they traveled, Vexal explained what had happened. When the Saurian government had publicly praised humanity's courage, the Council had reacted with fury. They imposed economic sanctions, cut off trade routes, and began making arrests of dissidents. Thousands of Saurians had fled, knowing they had no future under Council rule. At Haven Station, Governor Maria Santos met the refugees personally. She had been preparing for something like this. The Council's cruelty was predictable, and she knew that anyone who supported humanity would face retaliation. "We have space for you," Maria told Vexal. "Not luxurious, but safe. You'll have food, shelter, and protection. In return, we'd appreciate any help you can give us. Engineers, technicians, teachers, anyone with useful skills." Vexal bowed deeply. "You have our gratitude and our loyalty, Governor Santos. The Saurians will not forget this kindness." News of humanity sheltering Saurian refugees spread quickly. Other species began reaching out, testing the waters. Some offered alliance. Others just wanted to know if humanity would help them if the Council turned on them too. Dr. Nathan Cole worked day and night to handle the diplomatic overload. He established protocols for contact, screening potential allies carefully. Not everyone who claimed to oppose the Council was genuine. Some were Council spies trying to infiltrate human operations. But many were sincere, and slowly, the network grew. On Zenith Prime, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Councillor Vexthor had been stripped of his military command after his failure to quickly crush humanity. A new commander, a cautious strategist named Admiral Thexon, had taken over the fleet. But the damage was done. The Council's reputation for invincibility had been shattered. In the Council chamber, species that had always been quiet and obedient were asking uncomfortable questions. Why had the humans been able to resist? Why had the Council's superior technology failed to deliver a quick victory? And most dangerously, what would happen if other species tried to follow humanity's example? The Vraxian representative, a collective consciousness that spoke in harmonious voices, addressed the chamber. The Council's response to human defiance has been ineffective and has damaged our credibility. Perhaps it is time to consider a diplomatic solution. Bring the humans back into the fold with more generous terms. The Krell representative roared in anger. Weakness. You suggest we reward their defiance? If we show mercy now, every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us without consequence. The debate raged for hours. Some council members wanted to escalate the military campaign. Others wanted to negotiate. A few, very quietly, wondered if the council's whole system of governance needed to be reconsidered. Admiral Kyle Harris stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station and watched the biggest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 300 ships, everything Earth could put into space. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and the new dreadnought that had been built in secret over the past 5 years. The ship was named Hope, because that's what it represented, but the human fleet wasn't alone anymore. Alongside the Earth ships were vessels from a dozen other species. Saurian frigates with their distinctive green hulls. Vraxian battlecruisers that had once served the Council. Ships from the Thal Confederacy. And half a dozen smaller civilizations. Altogether, the Allied fleet numbered over 500 ships. It still wasn't enough. Intelligence reports said the Council was sending everything they had. Over 800 ships under the command of Admiral Thexan, the cautious strategist who had replaced Vexthor. This would be the decisive battle. If the Allies won, the Council's power would be broken forever. If they lost, humanity and everyone who had sided with them would be crushed. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Paul Stevens. He had been promoted after his service on the Valiant and now served as Kyle's chief of staff. Kyle nodded. "Send the fleet-wide message. Today we fight not just for humanity, but for every species that has been pushed down by the Council's arrogance. Today we show them that the age of their dominance is over." The message transmitted across the fleet. Kyle could imagine the crews on all those ships, human and alien, preparing themselves for what was coming. Some would die today. Many would die, but they would die free, standing up for what they believed in. The Council fleet appeared on the long-range sensors. 800 ships moving in perfect formation, a display of power designed to intimidate anyone who saw it. Admiral Thexan was announcing his presence, daring the Allies to face him in open battle. Kyle smiled grimly. "All ships execute Battle Plan Delta. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The Allied fleet spread out, not in the tight formations the Council expected, but in a loose web that gave each ship room to maneuver. It was a human tactical innovation, based on the idea that flexibility was better than rigid structure. The aliens had been skeptical at first, but after training exercises, they had come to see the wisdom in it. The two fleets met in the space between Earth and Mars, an area humans called the battle zone. As soon as they entered weapons range, both sides opened fire. The space lit up with energy beams, missiles, and explosive rounds. Ships on both sides took hits and either died instantly or limped away trailing debris. Kyle watched the tactical display, his mind processing information faster than his staff could report it. "Saurian Squadron 3 is taking heavy fire," Paul called out. "They're requesting support." "Send the Hope and her escort group," Kyle ordered. "And tell Commander Blake to hit the Council's left flank. They're extending too far trying to surround us." Commander Ryan Blake received his orders aboard the Defiant. His ship had been repaired and upgraded after the first battle, and now she was leading a strike group of 20 fast attack ships. Ryan smiled when he saw the Council's formation. Admiral Thexan was playing it safe, using textbook tactics that any Academy student would recognize. "All ships follow my lead," Ryan said. He guided the Defiant through the chaos of battle, weaving between larger ships and avoiding the worst of the fighting. His target was a Council logistics group at the rear of their formation. Supply ships and tankers, lightly defended because no one expected them to be attacked. The Defiant strike group hit the logistics ships like a hammer on glass. Within minutes, 5 supply vessels were destroyed and 3 more were crippled. The Council fleet's rear area dissolved into chaos as ships scrambled to protect their vulnerable supply line. Lieutenant Maya Jordan was in her fighter again, leading her squadron through the thickest part of the battle. She had 30 fighters under her command now, a mix of human and Saurian pilots. The Saurians flew differently than humans, more cautious and precise, but they were learning fast. All fighters target the Council carriers, Maya ordered. Same tactics as before. Hit the flight decks and get out before they can target us. Her squadron dove toward the nearest carrier, a massive Krell vessel bristling with weapons. The carrier's point defense systems opened up, filling space with defensive fire. Maya twisted and spun her fighter through the barrage, feeling the familiar rush of combat. One of her wingmen wasn't as lucky. His fighter took a direct hit and vanished in a ball of fire. Maya gritted her teeth and kept flying. She couldn't mourn now. That would come later if there was a later. She launched her missiles and pulled up hard, feeling the G-forces push her into her seat. Behind her, the carrier's flight deck erupted in explosions. On the Hope, Captain Jake Morrison commanded humanity's new dreadnought with calm precision. The ship was massive, bigger than anything Earth had built before, and packed with weapons that had been designed specifically to counter Council technology. When the Hope fired, Council ships died, but the Council wasn't giving up. Admiral Thexon sent his heavy ships forward, massive dreadnoughts and battle cruisers that dwarfed even the Hope. The space around Jake's ship became a hell of weapons fire. The Hope's shields held, but Jake knew they couldn't take this punishment forever. All power to forward shields, Jake ordered. We're going straight at them. His crew looked at him with wide eyes, but they obeyed. The Hope accelerated directly toward the Council's battle line. Energy beams struck her shields, and Jake felt the ship shudder. But they kept going, getting closer and closer. Fire all weapons, Jake said calmly when they reached point-blank range. The Hope's guns opened up at distances so short that shields became almost useless. A Council battlecruiser took the full force of the Hope's broadside and split in half. A Zelthian dreadnought lost its forward section and began spinning out of control. The Council ships around the Hope tried to return fire, but they were getting in each other's way. Jake guided the Hope through the Council formation like a shark through a school of fish. Behind him, other Allied ships followed, exploiting the hole he had torn in the enemy lines. On Zenith Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle in horrified silence. The fighting had been going on for 3 hours, and it wasn't going the way they had expected. The Allied fleet was outnumbered but not outmatched. Human tactics and determination combined with alien knowledge and resources were proving to be a deadly combination. Prime Counselor Thexon, who was different from Admiral Thexon despite the similar name, spoke into the communication system. "Admiral, report your status." Admiral Thexon's voice came back strained. "We are holding, but barely. These humans fight like demons, and the Allied ships are more coordinated than we anticipated. They have learned from each other's strengths." "Can you win?" the Prime Counselor asked bluntly. There was a long pause. "I do not know." Those 4 words sent a shock through the Council chamber. Admiral Thexon never admitted doubt. If he was uncertain, then the battle might truly be lost. In orbit around Earth, Governor Maria Santos watched the battle from the colony command ship. She had been given authority over the evacuation plans if the battle went wrong. Civilian ships were standing by to flee the solar system if the Council broke through. But Maria wasn't watching the evacuation ships. She was watching the battle, and what she saw filled her with fierce pride. "They're holding," she said to her assistant Peter Shaw. "Our people are holding the line." Peter nodded, his eyes glued to the display. "More than holding. Look at the casualty reports. The Council has lost twice as many ships as we have." Maria allowed herself a small smile. "Then maybe we actually have a chance." Back in the battle zone, the fighting reached a critical point. Admiral Thexon committed his reserves, sending fresh ships into the battle to try to break the Allied lines. But Kyle Harris had been expecting this. He had held back his own reserves, waiting for exactly this moment. "All reserve units execute Operation Hammer," Kyle ordered. From behind the Allied lines, 100 fresh ships accelerated forward. They hit the Council's newly committed reserves while those ships were still getting into formation. The Council forces, caught off guard, tried to adjust, but it was too late. The Allied reserves tore through them like paper. Admiral Thexon watched his careful battle plan fall apart. He had been conservative, playing it safe, doing everything by the book. But the Allies weren't fighting by the book. They were improvising, adapting, taking risks that no sane commander would take. And it was working. He opened a communication channel to Zenith Prime. "Prime Counselor, I request permission to withdraw and regroup." The response was immediate and harsh. Permission denied. The council does not retreat. Press the attack. Thexan closed his eyes briefly. He knew what those orders meant. The Prime Counselor was more concerned about saving face than saving lives. This was going to become a slaughter. But before he could respond, something unexpected happened. His second-in-command, a Vraxian captain named Velkara, spoke up. Admiral, with respect, I will not throw away the lives of my crew for the Council's pride. The Vraxian Confederation is officially withdrawing from this battle. Thexan stared at her in shock. Captain, that is mutiny. No, Admiral. It is common sense. The Vraxians are leaving the Council. We announced it an hour ago while everyone...